One must shed the bad taste of wanting to agree with many. Good is no longer good when one's neighbor mouths it. And how should there be a common good? The term contradicts itself. Whatever can be common always has little value. In the end, it must be as it is and always has been. Great things remain for the great, abysses for the profound, nuances and shudders for the refined, and in brief, all that is rare for the rare. Friedrich Nietzsche. The system is about to be flipped upside down. Please keep your friends and family aware. Like, subscribe, share these videos.
Banks fail, everybody fails, we're going to crash the entire system. That's where they're stuck. And every central bank is stuck in the same place. As a release valve to that being stuck, that's why Bitcoin is very high. I think in all probability, I might be wrong, but I think that that's what's going to happen. It's going to, because people are starting to understand, it works on exactly the same technology backbone. It drives on a network effect. And as more people trust it in relation to currencies, right? Because it doesn't lose its value like currency does. It can't be stolen from you by like currency does. More people will trust it, right? If you go to Venezuela today and ask somebody which one would they want, right? You'll see the truth. As that happens, country after country after country, predictably happens country after country after country. The on-ramps, in other words, the trust to Bitcoin gets higher and higher and higher. And at some point, I think that on that network effect, the value of the entire network becomes extremely valuable to be able to make this transition. It will take time. The existing system will not go quietly into the night. There's going to be massive feedback systems. Dollar gets stronger, dollar get weaker, other dollars get stronger, weaker on the way through. But it's actually all bullish for, I hope, a safer transition to a monetary policy that actually understands that technology could give us abundance.
The fiat monetary system is a flawed system. It requires perpetual debt to function. We are rapidly approaching an inflection point. Do I believe that all central banks are going to transact with Bitcoin? No. The next system is a galaxy of blockchain-based networks that contain digital assets. These networks will exchange value and information with one another. The central banks and governments today are securing their role in the Internet of Value with central bank digital currencies.
Meanwhile, the development of crypto assets and so-called stable coins aims to create a new category of settlement assets. Stable coins may compete against both commercial and central bank money. Take the example of cross-border payments, where improvement is badly needed. Even though stable coins do not offer the same guarantees in terms of credit risk, liquidity, service continuity, and neutrality. This sense of urgency should prompt us all to collective action now. FSB and G20 actions are key in this field. In the last few months, Europe, for example, has made decisive progress in designing a holistic payment strategy, thanks to the commitment of the Commission and of our Eurosystem.
Crypto is a new category of settlement assets. The system is breaking down and the pain points are exposed. The blockchain-based networks that can settle with digital assets are able to efficiently settle across borders instantly and cheap. I believe central bank digital currencies are going to be paired to the digital assets in these networks to provide an on and off ramp from the traditional system to the network. With CBDCs paired, they could also ensure those networks run smoothly and provide the liquidity needed during times of stress. So what does this mean? It means that they're building a new system that works hand in hand with crypto assets.
There is huge territory that central banks do not cover. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you see what the landscape we have today, We just take care of payments among big players, and that's to the wholesale spectrum. And then we take care of payments at the more atomized level through currencies, through bills and cash and bills. In between, there is huge space to innovate and huge space to provide solutions. And there is where the role for innovation in payments is essential.
There is a huge territory that the central banks do not cover. The private sector builds in the gaps and the in-betweens of the public infrastructure. The systemically important core infrastructure will be settled in CBDC, or central bank digital currency. The majority of the Internet of Value will be adopted from the private sector. The private sector has built platforms that work. When the time arises, the central banks will plug into the working platforms and the Internet of Value will emerge rapidly.
I totally agree, and at the same time, there is a lot we can learn from the crypto world. Not that much in terms of the architecture. There are key principles of public architectures that we want to keep, like, as I said, core infrastructures being settled in central bank money, which for us is an important principle. But from a technological standpoint, there is a lot we can learn. We've learned a lot from the stablecoin discussion. We are learning a lot if you take DLT platforms, which are not the only ones. I mean, there are lots of options without DLTs. But if you dive into the DLT discussion, we are learning a lot from what can be achieved through atomic settlement in terms of connecting different platforms, etc. We've got to learn as much as we can from what's happening there.
Crypto assets have monetary policy baked into the code that cannot be altered. The central banks are inflating while settlement networks are governed by math. The global economy needs inflation. The money supply needs to expand as gross domestic products increase. The more that is produced and the more that is built, the more money supply is needed. When you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The central banks have used inflation for every problem that has risen. Today, these blockchain networks that utilize digital assets can handle specific problems in an efficient manner without resorting to inflation or debt. You may have heard that gold is the answer to all of the problems in the economy. This is not true because inflation cannot keep up with the amount of GDP produced. If gold is involved in the next system, it's going to be complemented with crypto so it can keep up with GDP.
The more this goes on, there becomes an incentive for other governments to peg to it earlier, right? Again, anything that creates the incentive structure built into it creates greed, right? Mm-hmm. That drives early adoption. That drives it broader to society. At least that's the hope. At least that's my hope. Because, and by the way, that has nothing. And I could say this totally. If Bitcoin went to zero right now, and we could safely transition in a better way that was better for society, that's what I would hope for me personally. I'm saying Bitcoin because I think it's actually the safest way to transition society. It's still going to be messy on the way through, but I actually think that that's actually the biggest benefit for humanity to get through this without hot wars.
Every time the central bankers use their hammer, they use inflation, it causes asymmetry in the economy. Some win and some lose. The ups and downs cause conflict between the groups. The civil unrest we are witnessing is caused by bad monetary policy. The super elites are on top of the pyramid and they want you comfortable where you are. Technology provides abundance, and abundance is how they can keep the status quo.
Yeah, so basically any fiat currency that removed its peg to gold, right, removed its connection to gold over time, since the 1900s has lost either all of its value or the vast majority of its value. So, the US dollar already lost over 90% of its value against that peg. And with the money printing and everything else that's going on, you can expect it to lose the rest of its value over time. So my point of this chart is that the US dollar is no exception. Basically, to date, the history of fiat demonstrates that every fiat currency over time will lose all of its value.
I Trust Capital offers a way to insulate profits from taxes with IRAs. In a world of depreciating fiat, all asset prices are increasing exponentially. Crypto and precious metals have an inverse relationship with depreciating fiat. Your taxes are set in dollars. It doesn't matter what the worth of those dollars are. The more dollars you have, the higher percentage of dollars you have to pay to Uncle Sam. IRAs are a tool to insulate from taxes. Be sure to check them out. The link is in the description below.
In payments or in money? How do we have CBDC at the center of the system, spurring innovation and making the functioning of the global financial system easier, smoother, providing liquidity across the board. And you can connect that to ongoing discussions on cross-border payments, for instance. We've seen cross-border payments have been historically based on correspondent banking, as we know. The correspondent banking network has, by and large, collapsed partly because of compliance rules, partly because of cost. And it's not working as well as it should be. And there is a lot of scope to make the international system better, also in terms of financial inclusion and money flows between advanced countries, emerging countries, developing economies, and so on and so forth. How can CBDC help that without stifling innovation? I think that would be the key question for the years to come.
Yeah, and I think
if I may, Neha, the standard, you're mentioning TCP/IP. And there is a long tradition of central banks supporting standardization in the system, and the latest example being ISO 20021 as a way to harmonize messaging within and across payment infrastructures. And we're not there yet, by the way, in terms of implementing ISO 2021, as we know. So we should complete that job, but also think about the next standards that would be needed across the board and also internationally consistent.
You just heard our friend Benoit say there is a problem in correspondent banking. It so happens that this is what RippleNet solves. RippleNet has a solution that's ready to go. Benoit is saying that they want a CBDC at the heart of this next system. I believe the central banks are building a skeleton, a basic framework, and the private sector is going to fill in the gaps.
I'm not an advocate for it. I don't believe in a bunch of countries coming together and agreeing to have a basket. That's not how egos work. That's not how world history has been. We were speaking before this started today, back to the Roman Empire. That's not how things have worked on planet Earth. It's just not, it's maybe it's possible in some future world, but I can't foresee it. What I can foresee is China being methodical. They recently came out and said, we are going to methodically reduce our treasury holdings from where they are today, north of $1 trillion, to 800 billion. And we're going to hold it at 800 billion as long as, quote unquote, there's no military conflict. So, I mean, they put it in writing. They said it out loud. And if you think about, this hadn't occurred to me until Jeff said it, but if you think again about an economy that is increasingly reliant on its government to support its people, which is socialism-esque in some way, shape, or form, that necessarily leads to authoritarianism, which necessarily leads to a much higher risk of currency war going to trade war, going to hot war. And it has typically been the way of the world back to the Roman Empire. I can't foresee the world saying, again, there's going to be some cute little basket of currencies. The yen is a basket case.
The G20 getting together and agreeing on a global stablecoin is never going to happen. Baskets of currencies have never worked. The SDR has never been adopted outside of a bailout situation. Why? Because governments will not trust one another, and for good reason. This is where a jurisdictionless asset comes into play. An asset that is not governed by monetary authorities or central banks, one that is governed by math. an asset that can't be manipulated by government intervention or human intervention.
At the end of the day, we should think of CBDC as an instrument. It's an instrument that the central bank has. And how can that instrument be used to facilitate the needs of society? Inclusion is very important, and obviously that has attracted huge attention, and that might be a vehicle to further financial inclusion with huge societal benefits.
Everyone participating in the global economy while the central banks track and trace every transaction. The data that is refined from every transaction within the global economy will be priceless.
Well, and maybe a lot of people on this show don't, but Bitcoin is a new business, right? In that it's a new monetary policy. Yes, maybe it still has risk, but it works on a network effect. And I suspect because of that, at some point, governments will be forced to peg to it, to bring order to currencies. And it might not be the biggest governments at first. It might be smaller ones that realize, wow, there needs to be some order. What is trust? What is my money? What is money, right? And I suspect that as that happens, first through general population, then more business, then small governments, then bigger governments, I suspect, just like in business, this problem won't be solved by the existing status quo. It'll be solved by new.
Central bank digital currencies are coming, and it's going to open a Pandora's box of crypto asset networks. The networks will use digital assets as a type of commodity and will have their own monetary policies. When the fiat system finally implodes, I believe that the wealth is going to travel to the crypto networks that are most used and are most valuable. Jeff Booth believes it's going to be Bitcoin. I believe it's going to be the successful crypto asset networks, including Bitcoin. Digital asset networks are going to earn our trust from the utility that they provide. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Friedrich Nietzsche. My videos often have problems due to the subjects that I cover and my perspective. If you enjoy my work and wish to support me, Patreon is a way to help me create these videos. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Remember to hit the bell.